Good Tuesday morning to you. It's good to be back with you in these daily devotions. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to rest and refresh. Last week I was on vacation, and so much of it was very much resting and refreshing. Of course, there's one detail to our vacation that wasn't all that restful and really wasn't refreshing. But for the most part, I think that as a family and as individuals, our goal was to do just that, to rest and refresh. Jesus examples this in his ministry over and over again. Jesus is always going off to pray and even to nap. I was thinking about this yesterday. Monday is normally my day off. I ended up doing some work yesterday to catch up from being away. And I came home in the afternoon completely exhausted. You know that feeling when you've been gone for a few days and you have to jump back in, and maybe something has happened during your time away where you're not quite as refreshed as you wanted to be. So I found myself yesterday afternoon on my hammock taking a nap. I think taking naps is quite biblical. I read about naps all through the scriptures, as you probably have as well. Maybe you haven't noticed how profound napping time can be throughout the scriptures. Jesus certainly often went away to pray and to nap. He refreshed his mind, body, and spirit as he served the one who had called him into this world. Think about that. Jesus, the Son of God, naps. One of the first occasions that you hear of Jesus napping, you read of it, comes from the Gospel of Matthew in the 8th chapter. The 8th chapter is full of so many stories of healing, profound acts of faith, where Jesus restores a person, a centurion slave. He looks at those who are ill, those who are disregarded, and he brings new life to them. At the end of the chapter, or near the end of the chapter, it says that Jesus naps. Well, it doesn't say it so clearly. Actually, the heading of the chapter, when you get to about verse 24, it says Jesus calms the storm. But the story begins with, a great storm came up on the Sea of Galilee, and the disciples were terrified. And so they woke Jesus, which means Jesus was napping. After all of the healing, after all of the teaching, after all of the intimate conversations with people and the crowds, Jesus went into the boat and napped. My dad used to love taking my sister and I fishing, and my sister loved the act of fishing. I loved the act of napping in the boat. Maybe I was destined to become a pastor for my ability to nap in the boat. In fact, it's something I like to joke about often. I have a spiritual gift of napping. I can pretty much take 20 minutes anywhere at any time and refresh and fall asleep. That's what Jesus is doing here. In verse 25 of Matthew 8, it says, the disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we are going to drown. This same story occurs in the Gospel of Mark as well, in the 4th chapter. And I love the way the Gospel of Mark writes it. Chapter 4, verse 38, it says, Jesus was inside the boat, sleeping with his head on a pillow. The followers went and woke him and said, Teacher, don't you care about us? We are going to drown. I want to talk a little bit about what it means to nap. Because it's more than just taking 20 minutes and closing your eyes. Think about this. One of the most submissive things we can do as a human being is to fall asleep. We literally put all of our faith in creation when we sleep. We trust that the chemicals in our brain are working properly to continue to make our lungs inflate and deflate, taking oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. We trust that our hearts will continue to beat with the right balance as to push blood to the ends of our extremities and perfuse the skin, and so that we wake up healthy. The act of napping is one of the greatest acts of faith we can do. Because we literally, whether we're conscious of it or not, we are literally putting our trust in the one who created us. It's always funny to me when I watch a movie, some kind of action thriller, which are not high on my list, but I do from time to time. You'll see a person sleeping with a gun under their pillow. How obscure. When you sleep, you are probably the most defenseless that you can ever be. And yet, napping and sleeping make a profound statement all through the scriptures. Think about this. Think about Elijah. In 1 Kings 19, he is fleeing for his life. Jezebel has convinced herself that it would be better if she were to murder Elijah for all that he had done. And so Elijah flees for his life. This prophet of God flees for his life. And in the midst of the story, he says to God as he comes into the wilderness, "I have had enough, Lord." In verse 5 of 1 Kings 19, we read that Elijah says, "I can't take it anymore." And he laid down and fell asleep. And God let him rest. And then he woke Elijah up. And God provided for Elijah a cake and an encouragement that Elijah would have exactly what he needed to remain on the journey that God had set before him. Yesterday, I napped and I woke up refreshed and amazed at how God was at work in me. I have to confess, I don't know if I saw it as much before I laid down my head, because I was weary and tired, and I needed a moment to reorient myself to God's purpose and plan. Praying is such a huge part of my life, and yet at the same time I find napping coinciding quite well. It is when I am refreshed, when I have been restored in my mind and my body, that my spirit really is at its healthiness. So as you go through this week, as you think about what life looks like for you from day to day, ponder the question, do I have time for a nap? You may not. As Americans, the statistics are that we take a third of the vacation that we are given. We infrequently work overtime and don't even relax on our weekends. In fact, the statistics are staggering on how many Americans literally bank their whole mental holistic capacity on 1 week of vacation every other year. And yet, it would seem that we were created to nap. We were created to take time to rest and be cared for. I think that that's the most eye-opening thing about napping for me. That when I actually close my eyes, I release the control that I would love to have on my life, on circumstances, on people around me. I release it all into God's care. And I trust that God is restoring every bit of the world around me. And so when I wake up, I wake refreshed, but I also wake up to what God is already doing. So today is Tuesday, and if you need a nap, I suggest take it. And if you don't think you do, I suggest take it anyway. Have a great day.